On today's show, Penhold is now home to a national award-winning library. In California, the courts have decided that bees are actually fish. In Canada, the NDP thinks corporate profits belong to you and that this will help inflation. And then finally, we clarify the confusion or confuse the clarity when it comes to biological sex and gender identity. This is Penhold Talk Radio. And we're back. Thank you for again joining us this week. My name is Brian Constantine. I am here with my co-host, as always, Michael Rowland.
Hello, hello.
And we have a special guest from all the way from Europe, though he hails from Canada. My brother,
hey.
Nathan Constantine.
Ciao.
You're very cultured now.
Yeah,
I forgot. Yeah.
Guten Abend.
But no, you've spent almost a year? Is it less than a year or about a year now?
About 9 months. Yeah,
9 months. Hopping around Europe.
Yeah, traveling all over with work and keeping busy that way.
Yeah. Realizing how much people are packed into such a small area.
Yes, coming from Canada, 36 million or 37 million, to Europe, where it's 450 million people
in a third of the space.
It's
probably less than that.
Well, even Germany's 88 million. So it feels tight. It feels tight.
Yeah, my in-laws live in Portugal, and it's always fun talking to them about how far you travel to go somewhere.
Oh.
So us, it's like, oh yeah, we went for a day trip down to Calgary, hour and a half back. Yeah, that's something you do. For them, it's like, you drove how long?
Yeah, that's across the country.
Yeah, that's like, like you plan at least a weekend around that. Everything is just so close there. It's like, oh yeah, I want to do a day trip over to Paris. Yeah, okay. You can do that from pretty much almost anywhere. It feels like in Europe, it seems.
Yeah, it's very short train rides.
Yeah,
anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They got the transportation infrastructure just to zip you around all over the place.
Yeah, you don't need a car in where I live. You can just jump on the train and you're.
Yeah, it's all interconnected.
Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, so yeah, for what it's worth, it's got that going for it.
Depends what you like.
Yeah,
I don't mind the space. The thought of that many people in that kind of space. I like being in a little bit more widespread country.
Yeah, I don't mind stretching out. It's not to go too long on this, but it's funny drive. It just you reckon the vehicles are different. Everything, all the vehicles seem smaller. You hardly see trucks.
Yeah, that's the first thing I noticed when I got back to Canada. All the trucks everywhere.
We have a lot wider lanes on our roads to accommodate our big vehicles.
It's true.
Driving through a city there, you got to stay within your lane.
Yeah,
if the lanes are even painted. Yeah. And then the other thing is just parking lots, because the vehicles are smaller. Like everything feels so tight. Especially when you're parking.
Yeah.
From my little experience over there. There's a bit of a change, a culture shift, just in the vehicles.
Yeah, it's a culture shock for sure, and an adjustment period.
Yep.
Being in Canada since I was born, so moving there is like a big change. So
yeah,
bit of an adjustment to go on.
Especially when it's like your first time over in Europe.
Yeah,
it's not like I'll go over for a week
backpack.
or two to get used to come
go
back.
for a backpack.
Yeah, like just dip your toe in. But no, let's go for 9 months of this. Right? So let's just do this. All right, but yeah, so you're in. Provide your opinion, your thoughts, your European perspective, of course. That's what we brought you on for.
Of course, it's rubbed off on me already.
But as we like to do, we start locally, and we start local. But this is national news. Our little town library, Penhold and District Library. Last week we announced they had big news, and it was released this week that they had in fact won a national award. So every year, TD Bank sponsors a summer reading club, and this is hosted by 2,000 plus libraries across the country. And so obviously the idea is to promote literacy and learning, that kind of thing. And so each year, the TD awards winners for libraries who are running these programs. And this year, little old Penhold won the national prize, first prize in all of Canada for their summer reading program. And I think the main thing that was recognized is how much effort they went to get the summer program out to people, because it was all run last year in 2021 when everything was still shut down for the most part. You couldn't go, like the library even was like, you could not go there, or at least it couldn't host all the events that it would normally host with summer reading and getting kids out there. So what they did is there's the 2 summer interns, and this was primarily run by just 2 young ladies, Sydney and Taylor. They got in the truck and basically brought the summer reading club to the front yards and backyards of people in Penhold and Red Deer County.
Yeah.
I know your folks, your family was involved in that.
We had them come into our house. Kids all pile out and sit on the front steps or sit in the front yard and have a story read and do some other stuff, activities and stuff. And it's incredible the dedication they had to keeping that program going. Yeah.
And so that's what I think that's what won them the award. And then they also had like one-on-one reading time. So they really made an effort to get this program, still keep this program operating in a very effective way. And so rightfully recognized for that work. And it's worth noting, it's not just a kind of a award of note. It's not like we're just recognizing you. It comes with $8,000 of cash prize now that the library gets to spend on other kids programming and to help improve the library. So it's a sizable, a significant award that our little town library has won, and anyone who's interacted with them knows that they are fully deserving of it. The other news that was announced is that the Penhold Libraries is changing or updating their logo. Though updates probably not. They're transforming it entirely. It's going from I think when I showed you. You thought of it as a clip art.
Yeah,
right?
Microsoft clip art. Yeah,
yeah. It harkens back to at least for me, it's the eyes. It used to the logo was like a book figure with eyes on it, and the eyes itself particularly look like Clippy.
Yeah, the old Microsoft Word 95, where as soon as you start typing, it looks like you're writing a letter.
I miss him. But anyways, I do not miss him I don't miss his kin as a logo. So the library has we finally resolved to and picked out a logo that's been now updated. So now it features a yellow and blue logo in the shape of kind of a book opening, and those book opening or those pages opening kind of form divisions of individuals kind of emerging out of this book to kind of represent the community. The flapping pages give it kind of communicate the life and the energy of the library, because our library is not one of those quiet, stuffy ones.
Not at all.
Nope. And so I think it communicates the character very well. And it should be fun to see that integrated over these next month or so. You know how quickly I get that going. So yeah, conflict of interest. I was involved in the whole in that process. But anyway, yeah. So that's local news. Like I said, it's local, but it's national news that our little library is getting recognized for the good work it's doing. Now, I got a few I think interesting stories here to start off with. The first one I kind of want to touch on, I think it's worth recognizing, is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations were held over the last weekend. So this recognized Queen Elizabeth's 70th year on the throne.
That just seems impossible.
Yeah,
no monarch has pulled. Has any monarch ever pulled it off?
So I think Queen Victoria was right up there, but I think this is the longest.
I thought she was third or second now, longest reigning monarch.
If anything, she's second. I think. Yeah, I would have to Wikipedia it, but if anything, it would be like Queen Victoria would be my guess. Any royal listeners will be correcting us now. You can comment below or something like that. But nonetheless, first, second, or third, 70 years is still 70
25.
years.
Was she start at 25 years old?
Something like that.
Because she served in the military first, like before taking the throne. Yeah. She had other things going on.
Yeah, she had no. The only reason she got on the throne is because her dad became king, or King George became king because King George's brother abdicated.
Oh, okay.
So it was never going to run down her line. It wasn't
supposed to be her line.
No. And so like The Crown, the Netflix series The Crown, I know it's not historical. It's not a historical retelling or telling of it. So it takes license to it. But nonetheless, I think this is a valid component that they include is her struggling with this completely new life that was laid out for her now.
It wasn't something she grew up expecting.
No, like obviously you're gonna grow up in the royal family. That's one thing, but grow up to be the person that everyone is going to be looking at. It would be a remarkable shift in life trajectory.
And then to hold it for 70 years.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's her birthday on Friday, in case you want to celebrate, just so you know.
Yeah, was she like 96
June 11th.
June 11th. Okay. Yeah, I guess, they confuse me because they celebrate the birthday on different days.
Oh.
So they they'll have the Queen's birthday celebrations not on her birthday.
Oh, okay.
So they'll shift in the calendar a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get confused about that. But was it 90? I'm gonna say 96, somewhere in there. 90,
something
95,
like that.
96. No, two thoughts come to mind is I hope she like lives for like another 70 years. There is something. She is an anchor in the best way possible. When you look around at how many fundamental things are shifting nowadays, how many core things that we thought we could rest on, she's been there still. While all these other things have kind of moved on, and so that's what I mean. She's a stabilizing institution at this point. That I don't know about you, but I find it encouraging still that she's around, and I can't help but think it's going to be a dramatic shift when she's gone.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a new era altogether.
It's all what we've seen. That's the only queen we've known in our
Our
lifetime.
parents as
Like,
well.
think about it. Yeah. Like anyone's 70 years, like that's the only one. So yeah, it's remarkable whenever, they do kind of the retrospective on her. Like, here's a picture of her with Harry S. Truman. Here's a picture of her with FDR or something like that. I didn't know FDR was before her time, but she was alive during FDR's time. And just president after president after president. It's like, wow,
Seen a lot of people.
yeah, she's like a living encyclopedia, it seems like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. There's something encouraging and stabilizing about her presence there. That I think we will miss when she's gone. Yeah, I can't even imagine a quarter without her face on it. On a lighter note, the other thing that has caught my attention over the celebration is Prince William and Kate. I don't know her title. I think it's Duchess or something like that. But anyways, Prince William and his wife Kate, and them trying to parent a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 8-year-old in front of the world's cameras. Have you seen some of those images that come out? Some
of the behavior of the children and just how awkward it is having that right in the forefront of the media.
Yeah. Just imagine your a parent. You're just how difficult parenting is at this point, and now try to do that parenting with like every world newspaper and video camera watching you.
Yeah.
While your 4-year-old is making faces and covering his ears, like yeah. Even like having your kid act up on an airplane is bad enough. How far can you go as a parent? It's one thing to kind of may snap a little bit at your kids at home and you feel bad about that, but then what can you do when you're out in the public eye like this and your kid is making faces and but I just found it. I found myself sympathizing with Kate trying to handle a 4-year-old on the royal balcony in front of thousands and thousands and thousands of people in front of them, along with cameras and the world audience. But I don't know. I don't think I'm alone in that sense.
Yeah, it might be a little tabloid if she sees her slapping her kid or something,
I know, right?
or slapping the wrist.
Yeah, how little discipline would it take for anyone to jump on her?
Oh yeah.
You really can't
even
do much
a
of
scolding
anything.
look or something like that, or just a brush down of the hand, and like it wouldn't take much for everyone to just go ballistic on her. But no, they seem to have done they've done well to handle that. So I don't know. With the photos that were coming out, that was something that caught my eye as well. All right. In other news, I came across this other article. This is the world we live in. So we're going from recognizing. So this is what I'm talking about, having a stabilizing force in the world. Like we can't even trust like law or the dictionary at this point. There's this article that's come out from CNN with the headline: California bees can legally be fish and have the same protection a court has ruled.
Bees are fish.
Bees are fish.
Did anybody consult with them? Do they?
Yeah, do they identify as fish?
Do they identify?
Hey, don't jump on their main story yet.
Sorry.
So yeah, so in California, they have what's called the California Endangered Species Act, and it's designed to protect, quote, native species or subspecies of a bird, mammal, fish, amphibian, reptile, or plant. And so, as the article says, notably invertebrates are absent from this list of protected species, so like insects. Now, a particular activist group or environmentalist group wanted bees to be included in the legislation. But as you can see, well, look at the list: birds, mammals, fish, amphibian, reptiles, plants. Where does a bee fit in there, right? It doesn't look natural fit in there. But here's how you get around it. This in the article says, but in a lucky loophole for insects, mollusks, and other spineless creatures falling under the umbrella of invertebrate. So a bee is classified as an invertebrate, doesn't have a backbone, doesn't have a spine. The act itself defines a fish as, quote, a wild fish, mollusk, crustacean, invertebrate, amphibian, or part spawn or ovum of any of those animals. So again, if you're just reading this, it's basically saying, okay, here's the fish category and here's examples, right? What is fish? How do you define fish, or what's kind of included? Wild fish, mollusk, crustacean, invertebrate, amphibian, and then any kind of hatchlings of those kind. So you read that, and again, we're talking about the category of fish, and it lists that. So here's how the court decides to read that. Expanding the definition of fish to include invertebrates makes them eligible for the greater protection from the Fish and Game Commission, wrote the court. So they look at the listing there, and every single one of them, except for invertebrates, would be classified easily as a marine creature of some kind. You know, a wild fish, a mollusk, crustacean, amphibian. Invertebrate's the only one that seems outlying. But think about it, we're still in the category of fish. Everything around it is referring to a marine creature.
Yeah.
But invertebrate, if you take it in isolation, sure, it can refer to a wide variety of different creatures. But it clearly would seem to be should be read in kind of the marine context.
Yeah.
And so if in so doing, I went and looked up what would a marine invertebrate mean. It would mean something like sponges, corals, sea urchin, starfish, sea cucumbers. So it's not like invertebrate does not have a marine category. It's not like there are no marine invertebrates.
Yeah.
Including bees now into that.
Apparently. So it says, so here's a quote. It says, although the term fish is colloquially and commonly used to refer to aquatic species, the term of art employed by the legislature in the definition of fish in section 45 is not so limited. So the term fish is a term of art.
So
it's like figurative fish.
They're basically just telling us, open your mind. It's more broad than that.
I feel like these justices would be like terrible at like pick out the odd one in here. Like which one's the odd one out in this category? Like, or maybe they would be super good. I like clearly we're talking about a category of fish here, and this is actually a reversal of a lower court opinion that actually read this and said no, that's like clearly referring to marine invertebrates.
Yeah.
The upper court now, who apparently know better, say no. Invertebrates means bees. So now, according to this legislation, bees fit under the category of fish.
Why couldn't you just add invertebrates to the list instead of grouping them into a different subcategory?
Take it out of the subcategory and move it up a level.
Or
You could, and that's usually if you
instead of finding a loophole.
Well, see, that's because it's more difficult. You see, because in order to do that, you have to actually go through the legislation. So like the politicians actually have to write a law and amend this one.
So out of laziness,
we'll
just say that they're fish.
They have to vote on it. Here, you just go to 3 judges, convince them that bees are fish, and boom, there you go. Bees are fish. You don't have to change the law. You just change the meaning of the words. So yeah, this is you're seeing this. You see this particularly a lot with kind of this activist view of or activist judges and this quote living tree kind of reading, where and we've talked about this last week when we talked about the change in life sentences. So we looked at the case last week in Canada where they ruled that consecutive life sentences, so 25 years imprisonment before parole, is actually considered cruel and unusual punishment. And part of that reasoning was, well, because society has changed in its perspective of what would be cruel and unusual. Now, when that was actually written into the charter, cruel and unusual, I don't think that would have been the issue. Same with here. I don't think the people who have had an issue with consecutive life sentences is thinking it's cruel and unusual. Here, likewise, if you ask the originators of this endangered species law, when you said invertebrates under the category of fish, were you thinking of bees maybe?
Yeah.
they would have laughed in your face. Like, what? No. That's not at all what I had in mind.
What school did you go to, sir?
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't take me long to put together a list of how often the law has, or the judges have changed law, and then the legislature just kind of catches up later on. Kind of talking about, we'll talk about the LGBT stuff a little bit later on, but sexual orientation was first read into the charter, I think if I remember my research, in 1992, I believe, by an Ontario Court of Appeal. It wasn't part of the charter, but the court themselves said, we're just going to read this into it because it seems where society is going. Because that's when you don't lock in the definition to their original meanings. Well, words change over time. I agree with that. Yeah. But if you do that with language, or if you do that with the written word, something written in 1950 talking about one thing. So here's one example of this is when I was going through in Bible college, we did a marriage course, and one aspect of that was to look at how cultural view of marriage has changed over time. And one of it was to look at different movies and how the view of marriage has changed. One movie from, I think, 1933, a Fred Astaire one called The Gay Divorcee.
Yeah.
1933. A judge reading that today would go, oh, that's a very interesting LGBT movie. Like, that's how they would read it, because they have this living tree, just language evolves. And so whatever, doesn't matter what it meant initially, initially it was just referring to the happy divorcee, which was controversial at the time, even in 1933. But now if you put out a movie and I told you, let's go to a movie called The Gay Divorcee, you would have a completely different idea of what that was.
Yeah.
But here, this is the problem when you separate words out from their original meaning, you confuse yourself and you allow everything to be manipulated along the way. And in this case, it undercuts the whole role of representative government. Like the reason laws, the legislation is there is to update laws if need be. But so many people nowadays just go, oh, the courts will recognize that things need to be updated. Culture has changed. Yeah. Well, okay, if culture has changed, then that's what laws get changed for. But now they just see it so easy enough to go find an activist judge and say, okay, yeah, I'll just read that into that word, even though it was never meant to. Yeah. So this is just to update your modern dictionary. put bees under the category of fish now.
Yeah.
This is a court approved opinion. So update your dictionaries appropriately. All right. So with our next story, then moving back into Canada. This one comes from the National Post, and you'll be pleased to know that the NDP has a plan for solving inflation. They have found a new amount of money to share with people. The headline from the National Post reads, the NDP wants to redistribute, quote, excess corporate profits to Canadians to ease inflation. So I'm just guessing that they've kind of run out of paper at the mint to print. I don't know. That's not part of the article, but I'm just assuming they've run out of money there. So now they're looking for other places. But anyways, the NDP leader Jamit Singh says at a press conference on Tuesday, he said that we see clearly that corporations are making these massive profits. They're making record-setting profits, and their record-setting profits are directly contributing to the cost of living going up. End unquote. If companies were just increasing their prices to meet rising costs, then their profits would be similar to previous years, but they're not, Singh said. So Singh continues saying that it's the responsibility of government to step in and say, if you're making excess profits off the backs of people in a difficult time, when people can't afford to eat, then you have to start paying your fair share. And there's their favorite buzzword, the undefined fair share. So Singh is looking around at all these greedy corporations and noting that, oh man, they have a lot of money over there and everything is a lot more expensive now. And so why don't we just take some of that money that they have, because they have excess, quote, excess, and give it to the other people. And so he continues in the article. He said, redistributing those profits to Canadians by providing up to $500 to $1,000 into the pockets of families who need it is going to help folks right now who are struggling with their groceries. He noted that overall the corporate sector in Canada is experiencing some of the highest profits they've ever seen. And then he also has other plans for increasing the Canadian child benefit and doubling the GST tax rate. I think there is another quote in the article talking about him wanting to increase the corporate tax rate as well. But he's open to a variety of possibilities. I don't think one of those possibilities is allowing corporations to keep their profits. I don't think that's one of the options. But nonetheless, that's the NDP plan. First of all, is anyone surprised?
Not from the NDP.
Solution being take money from rich, throw it at everybody. No, it sounds pretty NDP.
Yeah.
That'll
really bring corporations into Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My first thought was like, okay, so basically he's saying that these corporations are increasing their prices greater than, say, people's income is going up. And so this is why, or greater than say inflation is rising. And so because their profits are going up at a greater rate than simply inflation is. And so the case that he's making is, well, all these mean corporations, they've raised their prices and they've made too much money. So now let's take some of that too much money they've made and give it back to the people. And so what do you think that those mean, greedy corporations are going to do now that more people have more money in their pockets?
That's what causes inflation.
Like, you're getting into a circle here.
Yeah, You say circle. I always see spiral. I don't know why. It's like
inflation, death spiral.
It depends on which way you look at it.
But that's just using his own logic. Like corporations are just these greedy monsters. Okay, well, they're already taking from people whose pocketbooks, according to Singh, are already stretched thin. They're going to have no moral qualms about taking money from people who actually have a lot more money now to spend.
Yeah.
How does this solve the problem?
Yeah. With the CERB and the money that they distributed during COVID, printing the money, like that's how much money they printed is going to cause more inflation, which you're seeing now, the high interest rate, or you need to increase the interest rates.
Yeah.
get this thing under control.
Yeah. And then they really don't want to do that, though.
No.
Bank of Canada is slowly creeping it up.
Yeah.
At a rate that's much too low.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you've put yourself in a spiral. You have to pull the chute now. Just throwing out little putting up that umbrella while you're in free fall is not going to help you. You got to throw the chute now.
Yeah. What was the interest rate in the 80s? 14%, or the inflation rate was like 14%, something crazy. They had to increase the interest rate to 20% just to calm it down.
Yeah, it is
quite high.
Incredible. But yeah, it's hard to imagine them pushing it that far. Now, part of me is wondering, and I'm not an economist. Part of me is wondering is, so yeah, you throw in all this emergency funds into the economy. It's going to spike prices across the board. Here, though, maybe the argument is, well, this money's already kind of in circulation, so it's not like you're adding more money into the market without the commensurate production.
But you're giving the consumer more buying power.
Yes.
And that's the same thing that happened with all of the extra money given out during COVID.
Yes.
And the reason it hit so hard is it was a delay, because you basically gave people money when there was no real way to spend it. And then as soon as things start opening up, there's a floodgate of money just piling out there.
And record low interest rates.
Yeah. And so suddenly everybody's got money and money to spend. Prices start climbing, and we are now hitting pretty close to 7% inflation.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep going until something gives, and giving people more money in their pockets is not the way to solve it.
No, yeah. And so I'm just trying to put the best case scenario on this, because it's not so much the amount of money that's out there, it's the amount of money that people are willing to spend. So that's why you raise interest rates, and people go, oh, well, I don't need my money moving around in that kind of environment. But yeah, you put the $500,000 back in people's pockets right now, they're just going to put it back out in the market. And so inflation comes from people spending money at a rapid rate.
The velocity of money.
Yeah. And so it's not so much, if you keep your money in the bank account, that's one thing. Because if you're not spending money, then corporations, businesses, okay, I have to lower my prices to a point in which people will spend money. But if you have excess money, okay, I may be paying 20% premium on this product that maybe under worse times I wouldn't, but now, okay, I will because I have the extra money. Okay, you see this, you see how inflation works in this case. Yeah, and I don't see how this solves that that problem. Like, does it curtail corporations coming in? Would that impact inflation? I don't
know what the long-term result would be. All you end up doing here, like if he's talking about raising the tax rates on corporations and taking their profits, all that's going to do is discourage corporations in Canada. You're going to push companies out of the country and to other places, and then you've just lost that tax base entirely.
And then you run into other issues like. Yeah, okay, you chase the corporation's way, or maybe they don't invest in their next product or something like that. And so there's less things for people to spend money on. Like maybe you go that route, right? But then, okay, now people are saving their money because they have nothing, or there's fewer things to buy. But then there's fewer things to buy because all the corporations and businesses have left Canada. And now what are you going to do to make up for the corporate tax revenue loss?
And the loss of jobs and everything else. Like you do more damage to the economy by pushing companies out.
Yeah, so I don't like the article. The article doesn't make it clear how he thinks this solves inflation. If anything, he's trying to. He thinks, things cost so much now for people that we just need to give them more money in order for them to buy that thing.
Yeah, and
in that case, sure, it kind of relativizes or brings them up so they aren't feeling the effects of inflation.
It's an incredibly short-sighted solution. Yes, everybody getting $1,000 in their pocket is going to feel good right now because we're looking like gas here in Penhold just hit $1.92. Like
I shocked on the way over here.
It's insane. And so you get that money in your pocket and it's going to be like, okay, this helps. This helps right now.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's
temporary,
very short-sighted because it's not going to help in the long run. Then we see $3 gas and everybody's like, well, now where's my money?
Yeah. And that's where you get, the cycle, the spiral.
The spiral going on.
Now, the other the other issue though that I find that came to mind reading this is he claims that there's all this excess money, excess profit. Like there's these corporations just raking in the money, it seems. Now, it would seem in a healthy economy, if you are an entrepreneur and you're looking around at these 5 or 6 corporations just rolling in the money, what are you going to do? You're going to jump right into that marketplace because there's so much money to be
Made,
earned there,
yeah.
to be made. Why isn't that happening? Like, it would seem like if all these profits are being made and are perhaps consolidated in a limited number of corporations, that's what I think of when I think corporation. I think big conglomerates.
Yeah.
I know it's not technically, but that's generally where we're going. And I think this is where he's thinking as well. But even though the guy who wants to venture into self-employment, he wants to start his own business, you're going to look around at the marketplace and see where's all the profits going, who's making money out there. And okay, I'm going to jump in there because I know there's a lot of business, there's a lot of money moving there, and I can get a piece of that.
Yeah.
But clearly, if there's this much excess profit, according to Singh, how come no one's jumping in? Or it certainly doesn't seem like it.
Well, and right now being the just post-COVID, that had a big impact on it too, is during COVID, the corporations were the ones that were able to weather out the storm.
In fact, there's sometimes the government required your government benefit of being like the only places that could open for business.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Sure, yeah.
So then you've got the big corporations that the government is now looking at and saying, oh, you make too much money, but they're the only ones that the government regulations and restrictions allowed to operate, or based on those restrictions and regulations, only ones that were capable of making it through.
Yeah.
And so you shut down all the competition, left it all to these massive corporations. And of course they're making record profits.
Yeah.
Because you just left them as the only option.
Yeah.
Like you look at something like Amazon, when you shut everything down and say you can't go into a store now, of course Amazon is going to rake in the profits because they send the stuff to your door.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so to me, it would seem that, the more government regulation is out there, the more it hurts the little guy. These big guys, they can hire the lawyers and all the HR people to handle every single regulation out there. But it's that small mom and pop shop that's trying to get up and get through all the licenses and all the regulations and laws that they have to check in their check boxes and inspections. Like I have enormous respect for small business owners.
Oh yeah.
I do not have the courage to do that.
No.
like
no.
And yeah, you look at what's gone on in the last 2 years. Anyone who started a business in those last 2 years, like, good on you, especially if you're still around.
Yeah, if you're still around.
Yeah.
But yeah, this should be instead. I would like to see a politician, instead of looking at this excess profit and say and have all of a sudden dollar signs in their eyes, they should be looking at this. Okay, look at all this excess money out here. How can we loosen up regulation in that area to allow more business and competition?
Yeah, make it easier for new people to push into that market, rather than making it so complicated and convoluted that the only people that can pull it off are the big corporations.
People with money.
Yeah, people that are already coming in with a fortune.
See, that's a model of redistributing wealth that I can get behind.
Yeah,
like here you don't have to do anything for the money. Well, you just rely on the government and say, okay, I'll take it from this big mean corporation and give it to you. How about you just ease up on the regulations and allow people to actually feel productive, get their feet into the business world and earn that money. It's going to be healthy for everyone in the long run. But no, the government's NDP and the Liberals are not far behind them in thinking this way. No, they it's just a whole lot easier just for us to say, you have a little too much money, we'll take that from you and we'll give it to these poor guys down here.
Yeah.
No, lift up the bottom people, or the people at the bottom, by providing more competition in a sector.
Yeah.
That's going to lower prices down.
Well, that's how capitalism works.
Shh, that's a dirty word.
Yeah, you're not allowed to use that word anymore.
Yeah, you're getting us banned.
That's not the NDP way.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a 4-letter word to them. But yeah, no, it just seems like such an eminently reasonable way of going about it. I would have a lot less concern about government fiddling around with reducing regulations here and there to control the market that way, as opposed to simply taking money. Now, obviously, even regulations can be manipulated and abused, but at least put the veneer of making people earn the money or redistribute the money through getting people to work for it instead of just giving it out.
Yeah.
I think the economy, the country is much better off than this kind of government robbery that NDP and the left often like to go towards.
But of course, as we said earlier, it's not a surprise at all. It's when they've been pushing for years to start moving towards things like a universal basic income and stuff. It's the whole idea is you just redistribute the wealth.
Yep.
So it's not a surprise at all.
No. All right, so on to our main story. And if you're with us and listened to or watched our previous episode, for Pride Month, we are looking at the origin and development and implications of the rise in transgender ideology. And so last week, we kind of gave kind of a historical give you kind of the historical background to where or how we got to a point in society in which many, especially those in government, believe that men can become women or vice versa. And so we looked at kind of the history of feminism up through industrialization, the first wave feminism looking to get equal rights with men, the second wave feminism looking to gain equal roles with men. And it's in that second wave we start to see the separation and the breakdown between one's biological sex and one's gender identity, how they perceive themselves. And so for example, it was during that second wave feminism that in order to be treated equally with men, things like or the role of, say, wife or mother, so reproduction, was a key oppressive act on women that had to be overcome, because that was a handicap to women being everything that a man could do, and so that brought us up to about the 1970s, and it was around the 1970s or 1966 in particular that the feminists were able to look at the work of Dr. John Money at Johns Hopkins for further validation that biological sex and gender identity could be separated and they have no real relevance to one another. John Money was the psychiatric professor at Johns Hopkins University in Boston, and we talked about the twin study of Bruce and Brian, twins from Winnipeg, and how they came to his clinic when they're 8 months old, and because Bruce had a terrible injury during a botched circumcision, he recommended that Bruce be raised as Brenda, because he was under the impression that, as I said, sex is irrelevant to whether or not one grows up to be a man or a woman. That's all a social construct. It's all kind of nurture, as it were. And so here he has the perfect test subjects. He has young kids, both of the same genetic makeup, so you can rule that variable out, and they're going to be raised in the same environment. And so he recommends to the parents that Bruce now is raised as a female. And so this continues on for 14 years. And at the end of the 14 years, so 1980, Brenda is suicidal with depression, and it's only then that his parents come out and tell him what has gone on. And like I said, and like we talked about last time, John Money has gone through some psychologically traumatic things, trying to reinforce this female gender identity into Bruce, including but not limited to getting the twins to inspect each other's privates and simulate sexual positions in order to kind of reinforce this gender. Well, the whole time publishing the great success of this John and Joan experiment, as it was known as. So it's not, and so in 1980, Bruce is finally told what's going on. He becomes, he renames himself David, and but tragically, their story comes out in 1997, and it's at the beginning of the 2000s that both of them die, one by overdose and one by suicide. And the parents blame money and his psychological trauma that he put them through. But nonetheless, over that time frame, it's Money's philosophy and thinking on gender and sexuality that's become permeated throughout culture. So whenever you say the words sexual orientation, gender identity, you are using terms coined by John Money. When you are referring, or when using the word gender, in the sense of that gender is simply a social construct or this internal sense of your maleness or femaleness, that's John Money that you are being influenced by. So that's where it starts.
It's unsettling.
Yeah. So this is where it starts. That's the person that kind of all links back to, and is just from that one guy. Alfred Kinsey is another one to look into. He kind of has some play kind of in how, if you will, the LGB part of the LGBT kind of grows. But nonetheless, this separation between biological sex and gender identity has become mainstay now in society and in culture, and to speak out against it earns you no bonus points.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah, it can be quite dangerous, professionally and personally, going forward. So for this episode, I want to look at these distinctions between biological sex and gender identity. And again, I just want to highlight that one of the main books I'm using to kind of go through some of this, that I'm getting some of this information from, is the book When Harry Became Sally, and by Ryan T. Anderson. The subtitle is Responding to the Transgender Moment, and he kind of takes you along some of the history and cultural developments along this line of transgenderism. Now, I would recommend going out and reading this book, but you're going to have to look outside of either Amazon or Chapters in Canada. You can't find it there.
It goes outside of the common narrative now, so nobody's willing to sell it.
Yeah. Now, as I was doing some research on this, the other interesting thing, so yeah, this was banned, I want to say about a year and a half ago. In 2017, CBC was going to run a BBC documentary titled Transgender Kids. And it started to get a lot of pushback. And the main reason it was getting pushback is because the documentary was critiquing the validity of gender-affirming surgery as we now know it, as the only treatment. Is the question they're posing is that really the best way or only way we can go?
Yeah.
Now, just think about that. That CBC was about to air that in 2017, just 5 years ago. They were proposing the idea that maybe gender affirming therapy was not the best way to go.
And now you can't even question it.
No. Like
5 years later, and questioning it is enough to get you removed from Amazon or anything else.
Yeah. So yeah, if you and now with recent laws being passed on the federal basis, this has happened faster on the provincial level, but federally now, you face jail time as a therapist if you advertise or even hint at anything other than gender affirming therapy. And so, yeah, even just 5 years ago, CBC itself was willing to air a documentary that questioned what is now today the cultural sacredness or sacred text, if you will, of how we treat transgenderism.
And CBC is by no means a conservative, socially conservative media company.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's just remarkable how far we've gone so quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it seems if you have kids in say grade 9 to 12, you might want to listen to this next part because it's just going to be talking about biological sex development. so if you're prepping for those diplomas or just your grade 10 biology test, this might be a good review because it seems we've kind of forgotten and lost some of this. So but I'm going to go through it because I think it bears relevance to what is now basically the only therapy that one is allowed to go through regarding transgenderism. But anyways, biological sex. What are we talking about when we are talking about biological sex? For basically time immemorial, we've recognized that a wide variety of species, humans included, are sexually dimorphic. And that's just a big fancy term for saying that there are two sexes in the species.
Male, female.
Female.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, our understanding of it at a chromosomal and DNA level, okay, that's like in the last 100 years we found it out. But you ask any sheep farmer from 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago how you got more sheep. You took a male sheep and you took a female sheep and you put them together. That we knew that, and we've obviously as human beings have known that for a long time.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting at this point to just highlight that human reproduction, the reproductive system, is the only system that properly functions when the two parts are put together. So think about this: your respiratory system, your cardiovascular system, your immune system. All of those are they're all integrated into you. You don't need outside help for that.
It does its whole purpose. Its entire function is internal to you alone.
You as an individual, you don't need any help for a properly functioning cardiovascular system. You don't need another person to come along and help you with that part. But properly functioning reproductive system requires two individuals, the two sexes.
Yeah. So
it's just a really interesting thing to think about, that you need that in order for the reproductive system to work properly, to work as it should. So just something to keep in mind. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about biological sex. It's human. I'll keep it in the human species now, but it's the way that human beings are organized into their reproductive systems are organized into two separate halves that are complementary to one another, which is again is kind of unique to any other component of you.
Yeah.
So that's and so you can see the importance of recognizing that the two halves, because you need both halves in order for the whole thing to function properly. So I think that's important just to note that right off the top. It's not like this is inconsequential. You probably wouldn't be here if your parents thought it was inconsequential.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep that in mind. So when it comes to human reproduction and male and female distinctions, human DNA, all right, consists of 46 chromosomes arranged into 23 pairs. All right. I think that's going to be question 2 or 3 probably on the biology test.
Biology was never my thing.
I know. I had to pull off the book off the shelf just to make sure.
Dust it off a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The pictures help to understand some of this. Now, in females, with one pair of that 23 is an XX pair, and in the males, there's one of those 23 pairs is the XY. I think all this is this is just straight biology. They're like, if I've said anything controversial at this point, we're totally screwed at this point.
Yeah, well, if we can't get past this without debate, then the argument's hopeless.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is just straight boring biology. That's all I'm going for.
Keep going. We'll see. We'll see.
Good.
We'll see.
Yeah. So females have 2 X chromosomes, males have XY. All right. So in the ovaries and testes, so these cells are split 4 ways. And this is really in the testes and the ovaries, this is the only place where this process takes place. Your cells divide all over the place, but usually it consists of splitting or duplicating your 46 chromosomes, and so each new cell gets a complete set of 46. When it comes to developing cells for reproduction, known as gametes, these are your eggs and your sperm for your females and male side. Your cells first split your 46 chromosomes, so you now have 2 sets of 46, and then each of those 46 are then divided in half. So you have 4 cells now, each with half of your set of chromosomes.
Right.
So each one. So remember, you have 46 chromosomes in 23 pairs. They split, so you have 2 pairs of 23, and then you take those 2 pairs of 23 and you split them in half. So now you got 4 cells that have half of your DNA. Now, when you're talking about females, you split your XX chromosome. Doesn't matter how many times you do it, you're always going to have an
It's
X.
still an XX.
XX. Every one of your gametes, every one of the eggs is going to be an X. The males, on the other half, because of the XY, half the gametes are going to be Y and X, and the other half are going to be X's. All right, all good, right?
Yep.
Excellent.
Following along.
Excellent. Yeah, this is why I need co-hosts. Make sure at least 2 people are resonating with what I'm saying.
I didn't bring my paper and pen. No.
Yeah, you might want to diagram this out.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, careful though. So what ends up happening, of course, and this is why you get why the species gets half and half, male and female, is because when the male gametes, the sperm, meets an egg, there's a 50% chance it's an X sperm, and it's a 50% chance it's a Y sperm. And it's immediately upon that fertilization, when one sperm hits one egg, that you have an XX or an XY. Right out the very first cell is either an XX or an XY.
And there goes all those old wives' tales about what you can do to make sure you have a boy or make sure you have a girl. It's a 50-50 chance. Whatever sperm hits first, that's what you got.
Yeah.
Depends on where you conceive it, in a hot tub or a shower. I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah. But now there there's wrinkles, when you have twins, when that fertilized cell splits, you might have a fraternal twin, boy, girl, you might have identical twins. Okay, given that, but nowhere are you going to get anything other than either an XX or an XY in that very first cell. That's what happens. And that is right away a female cell, and really not just a cell, that's a new DNA. Understand that.
Formed,
Yeah.
You've taken half the chromosomes from the female and half from the male, and you got a brand new set of 46.
Yeah, that creates a completely unique set, being that half comes from one, half from another. It's not going to line up exactly with either.
Nope. Yeah. So you have right at that first cell, you have a brand new being, as it were. You have a brand new male or female human being. I'm trying to human zygote, though even that. I hesitate to use that term because it feels so inhuman.
Yeah.
It just but you have a male
cell
or female
forming.
being at that point.
Yeah.
And it's critical because that arrangement of either having an XX or an XY in that very first cell dictates the entire development of that being from there on out. It's the presence or the absence of that Y cell that's going to determine whether or not the fetus is going to develop into a female and develop female genitalia in womb, or the testes are going to develop. It's the coding for that is on the Y chromosome. So absent of that, you're going to have an X, and it's going to develop into a female, or with a Y, it's going to get instructions to go along a different development path. So the genitalia that's developed in womb is coded in that very first cell.
Yeah.
All right. Again, you read any basic biology text, this is what is going to be in there. And yet, I feel in the back of my mind, this is a little bit controversial. I don't know why. Now, of course, this leads to when the baby is born, this is where you would normally, the doctor would look at the genitalia and be able to declare with certainty, yes, this is a biological male or this is a biological female. It's like, congratulations, it's a girl.
Yeah.
Like that's, or congratulations, is a boy. Like there's no doubt about that. Why? Because the XY chromosomes has caused that development there. But that's not the only thing. It's not like that's all there is involved in sexual development. It's because that development of now the testes and the ovaries is going to lead to whole body changes, particularly at puberty, at adolescence. You remember that favorite time when everything changed in your world.
Everybody's life gets awkward and they feel like it's only happening to them.
Yeah, right.
No, we all go through it.
And all that has to do with the development that happened as a result of the XY, or XX. You developed ovaries or testes, and it's in the ovaries or testes that the critical hormones of either estrogen or testosterone are developed. Now, through a chain reaction of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, they send signals down to the ovaries and testes saying, okay, it's time to get going on this. So, and it's the development, it's the release of estrogen and the release of testosterone, to simplify things, that results in whole body changes from your physical structure to the muscle mass to your voice, facial hair, breast development, even your height, like your sex. These are all secondary sex characteristics that are just kind of a natural cascade down from the XY and throughout it. So I think it's important to keep all that in mind, that while the genitalia tend to get a lot of attention in this scenario, your biological sex affects every avenue, or almost every component of you in your development.
Yeah.
So it's not just a matter of changing an appearance here or there that affects you. Your whole body has been infected by this disease of femaleness or maleness. I say that term, and I think most 13 and 14-year-olds are going to say, yeah, that's a disease. Now it's interesting, and just kind of start to slide into the gender component a little bit. This development into males and females on a biological already affects how behavior comes across. So there's tests been done on primates regarding female and male primates and what kind of toys they'll end up playing with. And you'll see males go for a certain variety and females play with another certain variety. And because they're primates, it kind of rules out the social component of it.
Cultural norms.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So that's
not an influence by mainstream media or by social media. Social media.
I think they shielded them from like CBC programming before these tests. But even crazier than that is that there's been tests on behavioral differences between in 1-day-old infants. They'll see 1-day-old males and females are attracted to different images. So whereas female infants, they show more tendency towards faces when shown a face.
Right.
Whereas male, I think they were showing them like just different objects. And so right away, there's already these what some might call gender differences, these cultural differences that seem to already be there right from the start.
Yeah, it's ingrained right into their being, not the cultural gender influence.
Yeah. And I'll post references as much as I can to some of these studies, and certainly the kind of the pages, or I can give you the pages and the footnotes from the book When Harry Became Sally. He's got extensively footnoted, but I think it's important to understand that this biological sex is so how pervasive it is, and how primary it is. Like it is from moment of fertilization, you becomes an XX or an XY, and your development is determined by that. And then just a brief note on kind of maybe sometimes at this point people will bring up disorders of sexual development. So sometimes there'll be chromosomal errors either on the X or the Y, or you might sometimes there's two X's. So you'll have an XXY, and these will result in kind of incomplete or deformed sexual or genitalia in particular. But what doesn't happen is you don't get a third sex out of it. There isn't like a third gonad. And then by that, I'm just referring to the testes and ovaries. Like those are the only two options. What these are disorders. They're not.
It's
they're
an
not
anomaly. It's not a new thing.
Yeah, and so what oftentimes activists will try to classify intersex people, and I completely separate intersex from transgender, but a lot of activists want to put those two categories together. The intersex, so I think Klinefelter's is one common sexual development disorder, is that these are in fact disorders. They are a disordering of what is normal. But what activists want to kind of reframe this as these are simply differences. So, this is just kind of a different kind of development. Now, I think this is easily rebutted by saying that, do you consider your cardiovascular anomalies to be disorders or differences? The fact that your heart isn't pumping appropriately, or the fact that you have a dysrhythmia, is that simply a cardiovascular difference or a disorder to how the heart should be operating?
Yeah.
But we've changed it completely up when it comes to gender disorders. But no, there is clearly that this is just a disordering of what is proper. And it's not a slight on people. It's not a slight on or disregarding or disappearing anyone who has that, have those issues. It is simply to say that they need help, but they aren't kind of a third sex. They are simply disordered and need help. And to try just classify them as something different altogether, I think in a sense dehumanize them, but it certainly miscategorizes what they need and perhaps could hinder their approach to getting the help that they need. So there's your biology 101 or biology 20 or 30 if you're obviously from Alberta. 101, that'd be college. Like we're in high school with this stuff. Now, I first want to make a comment though, before we move on to kind of the gender issue, is that what we've just talked through is kind of biological reality. Like I said, you go to any scientist or any biological or biology textbook, and this is how they're going to lay it out. And yet, no longer do all doctors say congratulations, it's a boy, or congratulations, it's a girl in this kind of definitive way. It'll be congratulations. Here is a girl assigned for you, or here is your assigned girl or assigned boy. We now the language is sex assigned at birth.
It's even gotten to the point where a lot are saying they're guessing, not even assigning. Now maybe that's not on the academic side, but on the more social, societal side, a lot of people are referring to it as doctors guess and are usually right, but sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah, but how are they wrong? That's the thing. What are they comparing this wrongness to? Because we've just went through the biology of it.
Yeah.
Like in most cases, 99.9% of the cases, you're going to be able to clearly identify an XY male and an XX female by looking at the genitalia. Like you said, they are intersex. They are people who need help, but they are not. They are exceptions. They aren't the rule.
Yeah.
And yet, this assigning thing seems to. We're talking about biological reality. Like, what's this assigning thing going on? Like, why can't you just say this is a female and this is a male?
Well, and that's where they try to bring in that argument of gender and sex are different. So they're assigning the gender based on the biological sex, but then even they can't keep that straight.
But that's what I mean. I think that's what's going on. Because when you say you can assign something, there's the implication
that you can
change is assuming that you can reassign
adjust it. Yeah, you can adjust it, make it to what you want.
Exactly. And so that's my question is, okay, well, what's the criteria by which they are saying we're leaving the door open for a possible realignment later? Like you have to have some sort of criteria for saying, okay, we'll kind of provisionally this is a male or provisionally this is a female, but we'll wait for something else to definitively say so. This language here is actually, I think, reversing the referent of these things. And what I mean by that is we talked about last week is that this term gender was initially just a grammatical thing. You refer to gendered language,
Yeah.
like French or Spanish. But what's going on here, and if it was used outside of that context of grammar, you referred to gender was basically synonymous with sex. So if you were on a forum and you saw gender on there, you would put male or female.
Yeah.
Just like and you would treat it no differently than when you would typically see sex. They were synonymous. There's no distinction between them. But now sex is being used to refer to one's gender. This is how so when the doctor says that this person is assigned female at birth, they're actually referring to one's gender. And because gender now is just this kind of internalized perception of oneself, that's why they have to make it this kind of provision statement.
Yeah.
They are completely ignoring biological reality and making it subservient to this subjective gender identity.
So it has to wait until they have the mental capacity to identify as one or the other.
But think about what that's doing. The biological sex, again, has been completely separated from gender, but then they've kind of been relinked back together, but with gender holding kind of the dominant position now.
Yeah, for a long time we looked at it as you'd have a gender disorder and you'd see a psychologist or somebody to help you try to work through that and kind of get back to your biological.
More integrated, yeah.
So you're integrated with the physical. Now we've swapped that and put gender, this mental idea, at the top and said, well, that's the standard we have to go to. And so at birth, it's an assignment because with that possible change, because they're not in a mental capacity to have that yet.
But so even in the birthing room, think about what's going on here, because we just went through the whole biology of it. And up until now, whenever I said male or female, you knew what I was referring to. Yeah. But now, as soon as the doctor says this is assigned male, now the conversation or you've completely equivocated on that term. When you say this person is assigned male, you're not referring to his biological sex.
That no longer matters.
No, it's that human being you're looking at is provisionally male so long as it becomes aligned with one's gender identity. The biological sex, what it looks like, has no reference. So the fact that that person is XY has no bearing upon whether it's a male or female. So that biological fact is completely out the window. So if you're going through your biology test and they ask you what male or female is, or how you determine that, the proper answer, according to doctors who say assigned at birth, is to say whatever that person says they are.
Yeah.
It's completely subverting reality to the self-perception of people. Whatever you perceive yourself to be is what is actually true.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's what I mean. I thought that was such an interesting component because it seems so clear. This is what biological sex is. Okay, well then how can sex be assigned at birth? It's only because it's provisionally male, contingent upon one's gender. So gender now becomes the determining factor of whether you are male or female. And this fits perfectly into the whole transgender ideology because they want to say that transgender women or transgender men are actual men or actual women. And so, yes, this is why you need to assign sex. If you have to subvert your biological reality underneath your subjective gender sense in order for that to be true.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, this designation of biological sex as male or female is utterly irrelevant now under transgender ideology. Now, of course, if you go to your doctor and you want to know your susceptibility to breast cancer, what's one of the first questions the doctor's going to ask you or want to know?
Male or female?
Right. So yeah, there's always going to be a threshold in which reality, you just can't ignore it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and you do ignore it only with dangerous consequences. But this biological reality or biological sex is still critical for proper health care.
Yeah.
And yet, right off the hop, so many doctors are assigning sex at birth as if biological sex has no relevance whatsoever. And yet, when the doctor needs to know if you're male or female, he doesn't care how you think about yourself.
Yeah, that makes no difference to his treatment.
Yeah, it better not. No. Or at least when it comes to fixing you physically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so you see how we got. So it was so clear. It was so clear what biological sex said, and now I've just messed that all up for everyone. But yeah, you can see the confusion that gets involved here.
Now, is that just in the first country or the first world kind of ideology? Is that, or like if you go to like South America, do they still do the sex assigned at birth? Is this?
Yeah,
or is that more of like a Canada, U.S., European?
I tend to see it's more like that. The recent documentary, What is Woman, came out, and they went to an African tribe and asked them about, whether men can become women, and they look at you cross-eyed like you're from another planet. And so it definitely, and the progressives will just say, well, yeah, they just haven't,
they're behind the times.
Yeah, they're behind the times. Yeah, if they're being kind with that, with their terminology, yeah, we have to educate them. And yeah, you see a lot of Western culture, Western governments spending money to educate people on that issue.
Yeah,
abortion is another big one. Like that abortion is being promoted by Western countries where it just really wasn't a thing in many African countries. Not to the degree it is today. But yeah, no, I think this kind of thinking is certainly more of a first world
mindset.
Yeah, no, I think wealthy Western civilization kind of thing.
Right.
We have time to think about this stuff and screw ourselves up. You can look back at the Roman fall of Rome and see how their perversions kind of just become more and more manifest the more comfortable they got with things, and ultimately led to their destruction.
Kind of makes some people dream for the days of hunter-gatherer cultures.
But
yeah, when your whole life is just to
simpler times,
kill animals, survive, try not to die of
history has a cycle,
diseases.
Yeah.
That's it.
There's a cycle to these things. Yeah, when you are just trying to get by day to day, you don't have time to think about what male or female is. You just went and did what you're able to do.
Yeah.
But now we have so much leisure time. We don't have to worry about what we're gonna. For most people, we don't have to worry about what we're gonna eat tomorrow. Hopefully the game or the fish are biting today, so I can eat, kind of thing. We don't have to worry about that.
The bees are biting.
Sorry, yes, good. I love a good tie back. Yeah. Excellent. Yes, the bees are biting. Excellent. Exactly. But now we got just so much free time that we run the danger of falling into these traps of comfort, and yeah, I think these are reflective of much deeper foundations that have been shaken, but we'll leave those unexamined at this point. So with all this confusion around what male and female means, like, are we referring to biological sex or to gender? And now with it seeming like gender becoming the kind of dominant determiner of whether or not you are male or female. This ties into how that incongruence is treated. So there's this. Okay, so there's the term. So there's a number of different terms here. I guess there's three that are worth kind of highlighting. First I'll just refer to as transgender or transgenderism, and for this it's simply the sense that one's internal sense of their male or femaleness does not correspond to their biological appearance. Already my mind is going to the contradictions, but I'll just let it hang there. So it's just that mental, or it's that disconnect, or at least that feeling that you are not aligned with your physical body. So that's just as a general statement. Now, there's two kind of psychological diagnoses that are kind of tied into that. So like I said, transgenderism, I'm just defining it as kind of a standard statement, not as negative or positive. It just is what it is. Now, the DSM, which is kind of the handbook for psychologists and therapists for diagnosing certain mental illnesses or psychological issues. The DSM initially had a mental illness defined as gender identity disorder. So what this saw is it recognized that there is an issue, a disconnect between how you perceived yourself and your biological sex. And they saw that as a disorder. Mm-hmm. Again, kind of going back to what we talked about, with sexual disorders or sexual development disorders. Some people have the XY chromosomes just get mixed up, and development is in a disordered way, not in a proper way. And so gender identity disorder said that the gender identity you had was disordered. It didn't, you weren't integrated in a sense. You didn't perceive yourself as having the appropriate physical body. And so that was treated as a mental illness. It was that disconnect was a mental illness that should be corrected. And typically that correction was to adjust one's mental makeup, to change your beliefs about yourself. And this would fit in line with, say, people with anorexia. They perceive their body as being fat or just being too big, and regardless of the fact that they are perfectly healthy bodies, their mental beliefs about themselves tell them that, no, I'm overweight. I need to lose weight. And this is where you often see them losing so much weight that they are actually unhealthy. Yeah. It all starts with a mental, that's still classified as a mental illness that's treated on the mental level. Another one is body identity disorder. There's another term in there. There's BIID, but basically in that one is you sense that your healthy body is not proper. It shouldn't be healthy, or you feel uncomfortable with the health of your body. So in this case, you might feel like you shouldn't have two arms, or you don't feel like your integration, your healthy body parts aren't proper. You feel like you actually have to get rid of a body part.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, this is treated as a mental health order, and psychologists rightfully treat it as a mental health.
Pretty crazy one too. Like, I don't want my arm anymore.
I know. And
you do hear stories of that. Like there's been
crazy.
People who've requested doctors blind them because they feel like they're meant to be blind.
Yeah.
Oh man.
They're requesting mutilation basically because they feel their internal sense tells them they're supposed to be that way. They're supposed to be paraplegic. They're supposed to be blind or something to that effect. And it's a mental disorder. There's a disconnect between the healthy physical body and the personal sense of identity inside.
Yeah, you can look at it. It's the acronym is BIID. It's Body Identity Integration Disorder, something like that. Right. So yeah, this is in the official handbook of psychologists and psychiatrists for cataloging mental disorders. Now, gender identity disorder was kind of fit into that category for the longest time. Now, recently, I think I have to look into it to exactly when it changed. I want to say sometime in the 90s. But it changed from gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria. Now, what the difference here is, it still recognized that a person had a disconnect between how they perceive themselves in their physical state regarding their maleness or femaleness, but it was the distress that was as a result of that disconnect that was the issue. So this kind of goes back to why I define transgender. There's many people that are transgender who have that sense that they're kind of in the wrong body, but they don't really have any kind of anguish or distress. They're not struggling with that. Gender dysphoria would be the people who have that disconnect, but are feeling some sort of distress, some sort of dysphoria around it. And, that could be internal, that could be their lived, how they're being treated socially. So it matters that their gender disconnect or their gender incongruence with their body is causing some sort of distress in their life.
Yeah.
Now notice the shift there though. It's not so much the gender incongruence that's the issue. Now, just gender identity disorder treated you because the disconnect was the issue. Gender dysphoria treats you because it's the dysphoria component that's an issue. It's the distress that the disconnect is causing. All right. And so the question would be now, do you, to kind of rectify this disconnect, and so satisfy the distress or dysphoria, do you treat the mind? Do you try to change the mind, or you try to change the body? Because the key is you want, ideally, and for most people, you want an integrated whole. You want your mind and your physical body to all be one unit. Yeah. And so one of those things, if they're disconnected, has to be fixed to fit the other one. And so as we've kind of touched on already, we've got to the point where gender is the determining factor. So if gender is the standard now, you only have one option. What society, what quote the professionals are saying now is that how one personally identifies determines everything else. Mm-hmm. And so you can't fix that because the gender is okay. So you have to, there's only one way to make everything put back into alignment. You change the body. But again, if male and femaleness is completely defined by one's mental state,
you change the mind.
Well, yeah, but my question is then, okay, well, what then does it mean to change a body into male or female?
Right.
Then if you already perceive yourself as a male, then you are a male. That's what it means when we say sex assigned at birth. We're waiting for it to align with your gender. That's what makes you male. Well, then why would you need to change your body?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then you say, because you're saying then I have to have a male body in order to match my male gender. But we've already said your gender is what determines whether you're male or not your body. So you see the contradictions going on here. It's really a philosophical mess. But nonetheless, the government now, and like I said, this is becoming more and more pervasive across Western civilization, really, is that you only have one option now, and it's to affirm the gender and change the body.
Yep. And
like I said, Bill C-11 that was just passed earlier this year, I think, or late last year, on the federal level, said that if you decide to go any other route, if you really just even hint at the fact that your gender, your mental beliefs about yourself are what's wrong, you could be fined and sent to jail. Like that's on the books now.
Say that again.
So if you go to a therapist with your kid, and your kid says, "I'm your son," let's say, and he comes to the therapist and says, "I'm a girl," that therapist cannot try to talk to that boy and say, "Okay, what do you mean by that? What do you think boys are? What do you think girls are?" And try to change their thinking about these things. Right. He's not allowed to do that. You can't change the mental beliefs because those are good. Those are the standard.
Once that belief is there and determined, the only thing you can do is affirm that belief, support that, and move in the direction that provides the best support for that belief.
Yeah, and so that's why it's now termed gender affirming therapy. It used to be gender reassignment surgery. You don't see that as much anymore.
It's gender affirming.
Yeah. It's a softer approach, probably.
It is, but it's also, it again gets rid of this whole connection to biology. Because I think they also recognize that if biological sex is an actual objective thing, if you look at the totality of what it means to be a biological male or female, you can't reassign that. You just can't change the genitalia or grow facial hair and say, yeah, okay, now I'm a male. We've talked about how pervasive it is.
Your entire DNA is still whatever it was when you were born or when you were conceived.
Or XY. Yeah.
Like, you're stuck with that DNA.
So they want to get away from that contradiction, at least that one, I think. And so gender affirming seems it kind of hides that fact that you can't really reassign sex, biological sex. And so if you go into the therapist with your son or your daughter, or if you go in to it, and you explain that you're having these transgender feelings, there's only one avenue that the therapist can take you down for treatment, and it's to affirm your gender. And so what that means is there's only one treatment plan, and there's really 4 steps that kind of go along with this. This is the pathway that you go to therapist. This is the treatment path you're going to take. And the first one is social transition. So basically your son or daughter is now going to be treated as the opposite of their biological sex. So, this is going to be changing up how this is going to be changing their names. This is going to be changing their dresses or dressing up. Yeah. Maybe reinforcing it with what kind of toys they're allowed to play. And so this and people like the ACLU or the Human Rights Campaign, they'll say that kids as young as 2 to 4 can rightfully declare their gender identity. 2 to 4.
That's 2 to 4 years old.
It's a young age. Like, I don't even remember what I was doing at 2 to 4 years old.
You have no grasp on any part of reality really at that point. Like I think of I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I think about the things that come out of their mouth and the things that they say and think, the questions they have. Yeah. They're just trying to figure out the world around them. They have no concept of gender identity.
Yeah. No. The one caveat or the one way they'll kind of get around this is that this has to be at least a persistent thing. So, your kid will constantly say, your son will constantly say, I'm a girl, or I'm a girl, I'm a girl, over a certain time. And so the idea is like, okay, that indicates that it's more than just a phase. But still, first of all, what 2-year-old or 4-year-old knows what it means to be, even their own sense of boyness, if they are a boy, or a girl, if they're a girl, like they only have that sense. Yeah. And then, the other component is phases can last for a long time in kids. And so, and I'll probably reiterate this a little bit later on, but most kids, 80 to 95% of kids that have these gender incongruence, these transgender feelings, grow out of it, desist, they call it. Yeah. Especially once puberty hits. And we shouldn't be surprised by that. Again, that's when all those hormones come rushing in. Yeah. And things certainly solidify where you are. So 80 to 95%. And yet, if you take that's not allowed to be factored in to the care that a therapist can take, because that suggests that, little Billy might actually change his mind later on, and you're not affirming him in his current state. Yeah. So this social transition starts right away, even at these young ages. So that's step 1, social transition. Step 2 will be puberty blockers. So this will be given to prevent or delay that psychological or physiological changes that happen when puberty hits, and those when that estrogen or testosterone kicks in, and your body goes haywire. So these puberty blockers are given right around when puberty gets started. And this is to prevent those changes that are going to be what the body naturally wants to do, because people who want transgender, the treatment is to stop that kind of masculinization or the feminization of the body in order to help it to adapt in the other direction. And so again, this can start, it starts whenever puberty kicks in. So, say 10, 11, 12, or boys and girls are going to be different, but that's the idea. Now, it's worth noting that puberty blockers are used legitimately in cases of what's called precocious puberty. So, a 6-year-old might start to hit the puberty stage, but the body's not ready for that.
Yeah, that becomes almost that's dangerous for health. Yeah. Like this is where that's a legitimate health concern that you're using that as a treatment.
Yeah, so they'll block that progress, and then release the body to develop naturally at the appropriate time. Yeah. What these do is it blocks your progression at all, and they'll say it's reversible, but say you change your mind after taking puberty blockers from 12 and then 18, you say, no, I'm really my actual sex, you just lost 6 years of development. And there's nothing to say that you can't, there's nothing to say you will get back those 6 years of proper development.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not going to happen. And so this use to block puberty from its natural development, as opposed to this kind of precocious puberty, is it completely experimental. It has no robust research behind it at all. In fact, there's a number of different side effects that come along with this. Like if you give, you stunt growth when you prevent puberty blockers. So the normal muscle mass, the more normal bone growth. Those are just a couple that come off the top of my head. I'm not going to read them. I know we're getting long already. There's a list of effects that come from blocking puberty. So that comes in around age 12 when puberty hits. So you get puberty blockers. Around 16, you'll get cross-sex hormones. So this is to develop the opposite sex physiological changes. Yeah. So obviously, the person, the boy who's identifying as a girl is going to get estrogen, and the girl who's identifying as a boy is going to get testosterone. And this, even more than puberty blockers, is experimental, and has even more concerning consequences to the health. Like, it's not unheard of for say boys to develop osteoporosis from receiving estrogen at like teenage boys, because it affects your bone growth. And it's at this point, especially, that you also get irreversible changes. So for women, a girl getting testosterone is going to lower her voice. She's going to start developing facial hair, particularly the voice. The facial hair, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's probably true that you can't reverse that. Yeah. Once that's put in place, it's gone. You won't return to your natural octave if you just get rid of cross-sex hormones. So this is where you get to the point of irreparable, point of no return, as it were. Yep. It's also worth noting that this is also, once you start receiving cross-sex hormones, you become infertile, which is not a surprise again. The puberty is where a lot of that sexual maturation required for reproduction takes place. And so you've immediately eliminated that. In fact, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, they recommend hormone therapy as being medically necessary for most transgender, and this is a quote, while recognizing the lack of scientific research behind it. That's not, I don't know if I exactly got that as a quote, but the quote that I'm paraphrasing does that, or refers to the fact that even the professionals in transgender health recognize the lack of scientific or studies regarding this. So he goes through social transition, puberty blockers, cross-sex, and then finally, this is where you get to sex reassignment or gender affirmation surgery. This usually happens around 18, or at least by 18, though even younger, it can take place. This isn't, not every transgender person is going to go through this component. They'll probably go through the first three. The fourth one is much more optional. This is where the physical changes are going to take place. Healthy breasts are going to be removed. Phalloplasty is going to be, this is where artificial penises are created, or healthy penises are removed and restructured to create female looking genitalia on men. This is, and you hear advocates saying, like, we're getting really good at this and making these changes. Nonetheless, it sidesteps the constant threat of infection for many of these people, the constant health treatments and risks that go on with these changes, and of course, none of these actually function like your normal genitalia. They're just facades. They're just meant to look that way. But nonetheless, especially like the phalloplasty, where you get kind of a penis reconstructed, and you don't see this, but the more you're starting to see some of the injuries, it involves taking like a portion of muscle and skin, say, out of your thigh. Or I saw one picture of out of your forearm.
Yeah.
Like it's a massive scar. It looks almost like a burn wound.
Yeah.
They take a chunk of meat out of here and rearrange it to make it look like a new penis. Like this is dramatic stuff.
And they're talking about doing this to 18 or potentially even younger. That's not a mentally mature age.
On a child who made that distinguish that he wants to be this way at 2 to 4 years.
2 to 4 years old.
Yeah. So
it's a big ask for a 2 to 4 year old to make.
Yeah, no kidding.
So this is, like I said, that's the kind of the four main steps of the only treatment that you can go through now, according to federal law on pain of punishment.
Yeah. So
including
essentially,
jail
your
time.
option is either you ignore it and just deal with the mental anguish you're going through, or go down this path.
Yeah.
You can't try to resolve it through the help of a psychologist to get your mental issues resolved.
Yeah. So let me close with kind of three facts just to kind of finish off this topic, and then we'll discuss alternative. We'll discuss this scary conversion therapy in another upcoming episode. But I just want to finish up with these three stats again. Just to reiterate, 80 to 95% of kids desist in these feelings. So you just let them go through the puberty naturally. Most of them are going to come out completely integrated with their mental perception of themselves. There's this caveat though, and there's recent headlines about this study saying that transgenderism in kids actually persists throughout their time. What that study though, I think more accurately, when you look at it, and this is a critique not just by me but other people in the field, is that it shows that transgenderism persists in those in which therapy starts to take place. So you take your 4-year-old in and you immediately switch them over to the opposite sex or opposite gender through social transition. Those kids are more likely to stay in their transgender feelings.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
they've progressed
already
down
been-
that road.
Yeah, they're being affirmed in it.
Yeah, of course.
So what kid is it
Well,
going to
you
be?
can look back. Was it Bruce and Brian?
Yeah. It's the twin study with John Money.
And you can see how they had to reaffirm that with what is it, Bruce to now Brenda, and you saw what he had to go through.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's and so you're a 6-year-old, you're an 8-year-old, and you're being treated like a girl. Like,
Yeah,
of course it's going to persist.
Yeah.
Like you look up to these adults as your guides.
Yeah.
And in many cases, the parents themselves become strong advocates for transgender kids. And so it has this reinforcing effect. So I think the study is more highlights the danger of if 80 to 95% of kids desist naturally, and yet far more kids than simply those outside of that range are being forced into it. There are so many kids that are going through this transgender treatment who would have naturally just grown out of it.
Yeah.
And that's going to cause tremendous psychological problems going down.
Yeah.
And that goes back to John Money's twin study with Bruce and Brian. All right. So 80 to 95% of kids just desist from these transgender feelings. Now, the other stat is 40% of those who identify as transgender attempt suicide. And this is compared to 4.6% in the general population. And this stat is usually used to advocate for this kind of, we need gender affirming treatment. We need to affirm them in their transgender. The reason that they're struggling, the reason why there's 40% of those who identify as transgender have attempt suicide at some point.
that's what I was going to say. It's got to be tough to them to try to integrate into society as a transgender, even if they want to go down that path.
Yeah,
it'd be very tough to be accepted in society the way we are now.
Yeah.
So I could see why the suicide rates are very high.
Yeah. But the other thing is, just think about it from a mental section. Like the fact that you feel so disconnected from your body. Like, I don't think most of us can perceive what that even feel like. To feel like you are not who you are. That in itself is going to be a psychological torment in many cases. And so, you want to treat that. And so let's affirm that this is the avenue we need to go through in order to prevent these kind of stats from taking place. And oftentimes, it's like, it's because social issues are pressing upon them. We need to do that. But you look at so many other oppressed groups, there's nowhere near this. Like, you look at the suicide, attempted suicide rate of Black individuals, or say the Jewish population, especially during, say, 1940s, 50s, 60s, let's just say the whole 20th century. you don't see attempted suicide rates at this rate,
or anywhere even close to it.
And so there's something more than simply the social stigma of a group.
It's an outlier, but for a reason.
Yeah, I don't think to say, like, you can't just say society just has to accept them and this number is going to come down. You can look at other societally outcast ethnic groups and you don't see this kind of response. There's something going on here beyond that.
Yeah.
But anyways, so this is one stat they'll bring up. Here's the last stat. The suicide rate of transgender individuals after surgery is 19.1 times greater than the gender population.
The general population.
General population. So these are people who've gone through the full treatment process, and this is people who go through commit suicide. Like, this isn't the suicide attempts. This is successful suicides. I think the attempted suicides rates is still 3 or 4 times higher than the actual population, but 19 times greater success in their suicide attempts after gender affirming surgery. So this argument that these transgender people will just get better if we just offer them cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and make their bodies integrate with their gender identity, it has to wrestle with this fact, with these stats. Now, the one common kind of pushback you'll hear is that a lot of transgender people will actually say that they are doing better mentally after treatment, after surgery, or after cross-sex hormones. And I think that's not surprising.
No.
If you're going through something and someone's giving you treatment, whether or not that's actually helping you in the long run, the fact that you're getting treated in and of itself has a little bit of an encouraging effect.
Yeah.
You're being looked after. You
feel
like you're going down.
We're trying to do something. We're trying to fix this.
You're feeling like you're going down the right path.
Right. So it's like, yes, this is what I wanted. I got it. But this stat becomes more and more evident 7, 10, 15 years down the road, when it's not so much. It's important that it's not the surgery that's necessarily that's causing the suicides. It's the fact that the surgery is not rectifying the problem in the first place.
They realize in the long run that the surgery didn't resolve these problems they're sensing, and now what? Now what's the next option?
Yeah. And then you come to the realization, like, I've just, like, think about the irreversible things you've just done to your body.
Yeah, you can't go back now.
It's it's just and you just leave these people in such tragic situations. I just want to leave you with those stats to keep in mind, because next, or in an upcoming episode, we'll look at an alternative. This banned conversion therapy. Like, what is it? Is it really so scary? Like that we have to put people in jail for practicing this?
Yeah.
Or is there actually hope and some reason, or at least to keep this option on the table? Like, right now, it's just been you as a transgender patient, the federal government says, no, you cannot be treated in that manner. Whether you're an adult or kid, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can't get treated that way, even if you wanted to. But we'll look at that, like you said, in an upcoming episode, and flush it out. Again, I think a lot of these things we're talking about is helpful, just to kind of get all this information on the table, because we throw these terms around, and gender affirming surgery. Oh, it sounds so good. that just solves the issue. we got to look deeper than we got to look past or may look into what these terms are referring to, get a fuller picture to really understand what's going on here, and perhaps have a more robust conversation than simply throwing these terms at one another in conversation. But anyways, I know this I think we are going to set a record with this podcast. So take it in two steps if you have to, that's fine. But I think this was helpful information to get out there. I think it was important to put these together as a package. So thank you for sticking along. Thank you for coming all the way from Europe, from Germany to hang out with us.
Yeah, the bill's in the mail.
Okay. Shoot, I forgot about that. Euros or Canadian dollars?
Yeah, euros.
Oh man, that's gonna hurt. Yeah. Okay, we'll get back to you on that.
On a side note, who's gonna go play Colorado in the finals?
Oh,
we didn't talk about Oilers at all, so I just
For me, I think it's got to be Tampa.
Tampa.
Yeah,
I'm not a hockey
he's not
fan.
hockey guy.
It means nothing to me.
No, I thought after Tampa beat Toronto and then after they swept Florida, I'm given the way that Colorado has played, I'm less confident of Tampa running through them as well. I think that's going to be a really good final series. If New York gets in, then no, Colorado's going to crush them. But no, a Tampa Colorado series would be really interesting.
Maybe change in of a guard or something.
Maybe. If Tampa goes 3-peat, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they're going to last though the next year. Toronto is going to get better. Edmonton's going to get better. Colorado's not going to go anywhere.
No,
so I don't think they're going to run through those guys. No, they'll beat any of those three teams next year.
No,
they're getting too old.
Yeah. Their shelf life is coming to an end here.
Yeah, it's been an amazing run for what they've done. It's impressive. But no, it's So if I'm picking, man, Colorado, Tampa, I don't know who I'd go with.
I think Tampa.
You think so?
Yeah, just the teams they played.
Yeah, I know
they had a harder series and.
Yeah, so to me, it's whether or not Tampa can clamp down defensively enough to defeat Colorado's offense. Yeah, and they did it against Florida. They squeaked by Toronto. Yeah, and Toronto put up big goals against them.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
so that's what I mean. I don't know which way Florida and Tampa or Florida and Toronto like. Those were high scoring teams, and one they swept, and one they barely squeaked by. But yeah, I think it would be a good series either way.
Anybody's guess.
Yeah, I don't have any money running on it, so it's all good to me. But no, I'm looking forward to either one. Colorado's been looking good though. Anyways, with that, thank you for hanging out with us.
Of course.
Yeah, especially these topics. It's not everyone would jump in to participate, even just to listen to some of these.
It's a very
things.
Pretentious topic, especially in today's society.
Yeah, you gotta be careful what kind of company you keep around here. Yeah. So well, I don't know if we do broadcast in Europe, so you gotta be careful.
You do, yeah. I do catch it in the odd time there.
All right. Thank you for joining us for this special extended episode of Penhold Talk Radio. My name is Brian Constein.
And I'm Michael Rowland.
And this has been Penhold Talk Radio.